The school bullies are defeated by a black girl on her first day, and she falls for the weakest student. The first time Maya Williams stepped into Madison High School, she wasn't thinking about friends, popularity, or even grades. She was thinking about survival. It was a hot, sticky Monday in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Maya's braids clung to the back of her neck in the southern humidity as she and her grandmother walked through the glass front doors of the aging brick building. Madison High wasn't fancy, not like the schools on the other side of town. Paint peeled from the lockers. The AC worked half the time. But for Maya, it was a fresh start. She'd been expelled from 2 schools already, not for drugs or theft, but for fighting. The last time, she broke a boy's collarbone after he called her monkey during lunch. No one asked what he'd said. No one cared. Her grandmother, Miss Laverne, squeezed her hand as they waited outside the principal's office. "Remember, baby," she said softly, "you don't owe the world your anger, just your truth." Principal Gaines, a tired-looking man in a beige suit that hung loose on his thin frame, didn't smile when he called them in. He looked over Maya's file like it was a rap sheet. "Ms. Williams," he said without looking up, "we have a zero-tolerance policy here at Madison. No violence, no exceptions. Do you understand me?" Maya nodded once. "I want to believe you're more than what's written here," he added, finally meeting her eyes. "I am," she said simply. The moment they stepped into the hallway, she could feel it. The eyes. Dozens of them. Some curious, some amused, a few downright mean. She walked straight, chin high, shoulders square, not because she wanted to impress anyone, because she had to. The bell rang. Students poured into the halls like water from a busted pipe. Maya made her way to her homeroom, room 204, where Mrs. Bennett, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a voice that could hush a storm, waited by the door. "Class," she said, "we have a new student joining us today. This is Maya Williams. Be kind." Maya gave a short nod. She scanned the room, avoiding the back row where the loudest kids sat like they owned the place. Her eyes landed on a seat beside a skinny boy with a crooked posture and nervous hands. He looked like the kind of kid who apologized when someone bumped into him. Maya sat beside him without a word. "Hi," he whispered. "I'm Elijah." She glanced at him. His voice was soft, but his eyes were curious, intelligent. Maya. The rest of the day passed in a blur of stares, whispers, and that familiar sense of being on stage in a play she didn't audition for. She kept her head down, trying to do what Miss Laverne said, stay out of trouble. Until lunch. Maya was heading to the cafeteria when she saw Elijah pinned against a set of lockers by 3 boys in football jerseys. The tallest, Marcus Boone, was built like a linebacker and acted like one. "You think you're smart, huh?" he growled. "Snitching on us to Mr. Carter?" "I didn't snitch," Elijah stammered. "I just gave the right answers on the quiz, that's all." "Liar," another boy spat, slamming a textbook into Elijah's stomach. He winced and slid down to the floor. Maya froze. Her fingers curled into fists. She could hear Principal Gaines in her head. No violence, no exceptions. Then Elijah whispered, "Those are my mom's lesson plans. She teaches night school." The biggest boy stepped on Elijah's backpack. That was it. Maya dropped her tray and walked up slowly. "Back up." Marcus turned around and laughed. "Look who it is. The charity case. What are you gonna do, new girl? Tweet about it?" She didn't answer. She threw a punch instead. Years of training at her uncle's old boxing gym came back like muscle memory. The first hit landed on Marcus's chin. His head snapped back as he stumbled. Before the second boy could react, she swept his legs with a quick spin and knocked him flat. The third tried to run. She grabbed him by the collar and shoved him into the lockers so hard the metal rang. When it was over, the hallway had gone silent. Phones were out. Teachers were on their way. Elijah sat wide-eyed on the floor. "Are you okay?" Maya asked him, offering her hand. He nodded, mouth open. "You're like Wonder Woman, but better." Maya cracked a smile. "Get your bag." Principal Gaines gave her in-school suspension for the rest of the week, but he didn't expel her. Maybe because the story spread fast. Maybe because students had video this time, and the comments online were all on her side. Either way, she stayed. Elijah sat with her at lunch after that. He always brought homemade sandwiches, crusts cut off. Maya never asked, but she guessed his mom packed them. She told him about her uncle's gym, her mom who left when she was 6, and how she never liked being touched unless she trusted someone. Elijah listened without interrupting. He told her about his dad's accident, the hospital bills, and how he worked weekends at the public library to help his mom. He never complained, just said it like it was part of life. They weren't friends yet, not really, but there was something there. A kind of recognition. Two people who'd been kicked enough times to learn how to land. A week later, Elijah asked her if she could teach him how to throw a punch. "Why?" she asked. He shrugged. "Not everyone has a Maya." She thought about it for a second, then handed him an address. "Saturday, 9 a.m., don't be late." That Saturday, Elijah showed up at the gym in sweatpants 2 sizes too big and a nervous smile. Maya's uncle, Jamal, raised an eyebrow. "This him?" Maya nodded. Uncle Jamal grinned. "All right, string bean, let's see what you got." Elijah had zero coordination and even less stamina, but he listened, and he kept showing up, week after week. So did Maya. And without realizing it, she started to laugh more, started to feel safe again, not in the world, but in herself. It felt good, until the bullies came back. Maya didn't expect peace to last long, but she hoped it would buy her time. Time to figure out who she was when she wasn't fighting, when she wasn't on guard. For a few weeks, things quieted down. Elijah was improving at the gym, throwing punches with more confidence. He still flinched sometimes when someone raised a hand too fast, but Maya saw how hard he worked to stand tall. Their conversations deepened. Books, music, dreams too big to say aloud. She'd never told anyone, but Maya wanted to become a physical therapist, help people get strong again. Elijah didn't laugh. He just said, "You'd be great at that." They started walking home together after school. Maya with her hands shoved in her pockets, Elijah carrying both their bags like it was nothing. But trouble wasn't far behind. It started with Marcus Boone, the same boy Maya knocked out on her first day. He and his crew had been lying low, but bruised egos don't heal fast in high school. One afternoon, Maya found her locker ransacked. Books scattered, a banana mashed across her gym shoes. Written in black marker across the metal door, "Ghetto trash." She stared at it for a long moment, heart thudding, fists twitching, but she didn't lash out. She cleaned it up. Elijah didn't say much, but he stood beside her silently, holding the garbage bag. Later that week, they caught Marcus in the hallway, laughing about it with his friends. Elijah reached for Maya's arm, whispering, "Not worth it." She held back, but not easily. Then it escalated. One afternoon, Elijah was late to the gym. When he finally showed up, Maya saw the bruise on his cheek. He tried to hide it under his hoodie, but she caught it. "What happened?" she asked, already knowing. "Marcus and them, after Spanish class. They caught me alone." He didn't cry, but his voice cracked. Said I needed a reminder. Maya's hands curled so tightly she could feel her nails biting into her palms. "Next time, don't be alone," she said. "That's not weakness. That's strategy." Elijah nodded, ashamed, but grateful. Maya told Uncle Jamal, who said he'd talk to the school, But she knew how that went. No video, no proof, no action. That's how things worked. But Jamal also gave Maya something else. Responsibility. "I'm heading to a conference this weekend," he said one night. "I want you to run training for Elijah. You're ready." She wanted to say no, but she didn't. She took it seriously. The next day, during PE, Marcus strutted around like he owned the place. Maya was jogging laps with Elijah when she heard a shout. Another kid had tripped, and when she turned around, she saw Marcus laughing, holding the boy's glasses in his hand. Maya walked straight up to him. "Give them back," Marcus sneered, holding the glasses up like a trophy. "What's it to you?" "He didn't deserve that," Maya said. "Neither did Elijah, or me. But you keep going like you own people." Marcus's smile faded. "You think you're special because you know how to throw a punch? You're just a freak who got lucky. Nobody wants you here." "Funny," Maya said, "because here I am. Every day, still standing." A teacher blew the whistle before things could escalate. Marcus tossed the glasses on the ground and walked away, but Maya knew it wasn't over. That night, Elijah texted her, "You were amazing today. Don't let them drag you down." She didn't know what to say. She just replied, "Be ready tomorrow. We're sparring." But before morning came, trouble found her again. Vanessa Moore, one of Marcus's friends and queen bee of the cheer squad, cornered Maya near the girls' locker room. "You think you're so tough," she hissed, "but people like you never last here." Maya didn't rise to it. She just walked away. But Vanessa wasn't finished. Later, she left a message on Maya's locker, scribbled in lipstick. "Nobody loves angry black girls." It hit deeper than fists ever could. She didn't cry. She trained harder. She pushed Elijah harder. "Again," she snapped after he missed a block. "You have my mate, I'm trying." "See harder," she shouted. He flinched. "I'm not the enemy," he said softly. She turned away, guilt rising in her throat. "I know," she whispered. I don't know what to do when it's not a fight." He stood beside her, not saying anything, just breathing with her. That weekend, they were supposed to train alone at the gym. But someone else showed up. Tyler Reynolds, tall, confident, with a linebacker build and quiet eyes. Maya knew him as one of Marcus's old crew, until he started pulling away. Elijah had mentioned that Tyler quit football, said he was tired of being someone else's muscle. "Mind if I join?" Tyler asked. "I need to learn how not to break things." Maya raised an eyebrow. "You mean people?" He nodded. "That too." Jamal would have said no. Maya thought about it, then tossed him a set of gloves. "Keep up." To her surprise, Tyler did. He was fast, but he listened. When Maya corrected his stance, he didn't argue. When Elijah slipped during drills, Tyler helped him up. Over the next few weeks, the three of them started to move like a unit. At school, they sat together at lunch. At the gym, they rotated drills like clockwork. Maya still barked orders, but less often. Sometimes she even laughed. She wasn't used to belonging, and just when she thought it might last, things turned dark. One morning, Tyler found a note in his locker. Just 3 words. "You're next, traitor." Then Elijah's backpack was slashed open during class. Then Maya got called to the principal's office, falsely accused of pushing a student down the stairs. There were no witnesses, no proof. But the tension was rising. And then, Elijah didn't show up to the gym. He didn't answer his phone. He didn't reply to messages. Maya's chest tightened. Something was wrong. She grabbed her bag, turned to Tyler. "We're going to his house. What if he's fine?" "He's not," she said. And she was right. Maya's gut had never been wrong. as she and Tyler pedaled their bikes through the quiet Baton Rouge neighborhood where Elijah lived, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the pavement. Her heart pounded louder than the crickets. When they reached the modest single-story house with the chipped green shutters, they spotted Mrs. Chen standing on the porch, wiping her hands with a dish towel, worry etched into every line of her face. "Maya? Tyler?" she called, voice hoarse. "Elijah said he was going to the library after school, but he never came home. He's never late. Never." Tyler clenched his jaw. Maya didn't hesitate. "We'll find him." They checked the library. Empty. Then the school courtyard. Nothing. Finally, Tyler thought to check the back entrance near the gym, a place most students avoided after hours. That's where they found Elijah's torn notebook and his glasses. Cracked, one lens missing. Maya's vision blurred with rage and fear. Tyler picked up the glasses gently. They took him. Maya didn't ask who. She already knew. An hour later, they got the text. A blocked number, no name, just a message. "If you want the nerd back, come to the old storage building behind the field. No cops. Come alone." Tyler cursed under his breath. This is Jason. It has to be. Jason Hargrove, Marcus's cousin, had transferred to Madison High 2 months ago. Rumors swirled. Fights at his last school, possible gang ties, and the kind of fake charm that got him elected junior class VP within weeks. Maya had seen the look in his eye once before, on a boy who smiled at her before trying to slam her head into a locker. That same look. Cold. They didn't call the cops, not because they didn't want to, because they knew it wouldn't matter. Not fast enough. Not for Elijah. When they arrived at the storage building, dusk had settled. The structure was falling apart, left over from a time when Madison High had more money and fewer students. Now it stood abandoned, the perfect place for something awful. Inside, the air was thick with dust and old paint fumes. Maya pushed open the creaky door, with Tyler right behind her. "You came." A voice echoed from the shadows. Jason stepped into the light, flanked by Marcus and 2 other boys Maya didn't recognize. Elijah sat tied to a chair, blood crusting his lip, one eye nearly swollen shut. He didn't cry. But when he saw Maya, something flickered behind the pain. Hope. Maya took 1 step forward. "Let him go," Jason smirked. "Make me." Before she could move, Marcus lunged. Tyler met him halfway and the room exploded into chaos. Maya dodged a swing, pivoted, and dropped one of the unknown boys with a clean elbow to the gut. The second rushed her with a crowbar, but she caught his wrist mid-swing, twisted, and disarmed him in a move Jamal had drilled into her for months. Tyler was holding his own, his boxing footwork turning Marcus into a lumbering target. Blood flew, but it wasn't theirs. Jason grabbed Elijah's chair, dragging him back. "One more step and he gets it," he screamed, pulling a switchblade from his coat. Everything stopped. The echo of the blade snapping open seemed louder than anything that had come before. Maya raised her hands. "You don't want to do this." "Shut up," Jason barked. "You think you're better than everyone? You think because you're tough and smart and... What, people actually like you? You think you belong here?" Maya's voice stayed low. "I don't care about belonging. I care about Elijah." Jason's hand trembled, just for a second. "Enough." Maya lunged. She didn't think, just moved. She slammed her forearm into Jason's knife hand, knocking the blade loose, then followed with a blow to his ribs. He stumbled. Tyler tackled him before he could recover. Maya dropped to her knees beside Elijah and cut the ropes with the crowbar. He fell into her arms, weak but breathing. "I knew you'd come," he whispered. Maya didn't answer. She just held him. The police came anyway. Someone had heard the noise. When they arrived, all 4 boys were arrested. Jason tried to twist the story, claimed self-defense. But the bruises, the weapons, and the blood told the real version, and Tyler's quiet testimony sealed it. Principal Gaines suspended Maya and Tyler for unauthorized confrontation. But after Mrs. Chen and dozens of other parents demanded a hearing, the school board overturned the decision. Jason and Marcus were expelled. The others never came back. Weeks passed. The story spread. Maya became something of a legend, equal parts feared and admired. Elijah was back in class within days, glasses repaired with bright blue tape. He wore them with pride. Tyler kept training, and Maya changed. Not on the outside. She still walked like someone ready to fight. But something had softened. The walls she'd built for years had cracks now. It was a Friday afternoon when Elijah found her behind the gym, watching the clouds. "Hey," he said. "Hey." She didn't move. "How's your eye?" "Still colorful," he said with a grin. "But I've been thinking." "Dangerous," she teased. He laughed. Then he sat beside her, shoulders brushing. "I've never met anyone like you." Maya glanced sideways. "That a good thing?" "Yeah," he said. "It is." She looked at him, really looked, at the tiny scar on his chin, the way he tapped his fingers when he was nervous, the way he never looked away, even when he was scared. "I'm not easy," she said. "I've got a lot of sharp edges." Elijah nodded. "That's okay. I've got soft ones." She smiled, then leaned in, just enough to rest her head on his shoulder. They sat in silence, letting the afternoon sun warm the bruised parts of them. A month later, Uncle Jamal's gym was busier than ever. Word had gotten around. Self-defense classes filled up, especially with girls. Maya ran drills after school, teaching them the same way she'd taught Elijah. "Faster," she'd call out. "Smarter. Never first to strike, but last to fall." Tyler helped too, calmer now, more in control. Elijah volunteered on weekends, organizing equipment, managing the schedule. One evening, as they closed up the gym, Jamal handed Maya a flyer. "State Youth Tournament, Baton Rouge Civic Center, 3-person team." Maya raised an eyebrow. "Us?" Jamal nodded. "Why not?" She looked at Tyler, then at Elijah. "We're not flashy." "You're something better," Jamal said. "You're real." They entered. The day of the tournament, Maya wore her mother's old hoodie, the same one she used to wear to bed when the nights got too long. Elijah wore a pair of new shoes, his first. Tyler had wrapped his old fight gloves with red tape, a symbol, he said, of change. They didn't win every match. But they never gave up. They moved like a team, fierce, focused, bound together by something stronger than muscle. After the final round, as they stood with their hands raised, Maya looked into the crowd and saw Miss Laverne. Her grandmother's face was wet with tears, clapping slowly. Maya smiled, not just with her lips but with something deeper, because she knew now what strength really meant. Not fists, not victories, but showing up. Again, and again, even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. And for the first time in her life, Maya Williams didn't feel like a weapon. She felt whole. What happens when the so-called king of a prestigious high school picks the wrong target? A quiet girl with a connection so powerful, it could change everything. This inspirational story follows Imani Rhodes, a soft-spoken new transfer trying to stay invisible at an elite high school in Los Angeles. But after a single act of public humiliation, she finds herself in the crosshairs of Logan Wells, the principal's son, and the school's untouchable golden boy. Logan sees Imani as an easy mark, weak, isolated, with no one behind her. What he doesn't know is that Imani is hiding a truth powerful enough to shake the entire school to its core. Stay with this story, because it begins with a bully's arrogance and ends with the collapse he never saw coming. The gates of Calder Prep, tucked neatly between the polished streets of Bel Air and the Santa Monica Mountains, opened every weekday morning to a procession of blacked-out SUVs, Teslas, and Range Rovers. It was the kind of school where last names mattered more than GPAs, and lineage could open more doors than talent. Imani Rhodes stepped off the city bus 2 blocks away. Her dress swayed in the early morning breeze. Soft floral cotton that brushed her knees, cinched at the waist with a fabric belt. It had once belonged to her grandmother, a civil rights organizer who wore it during the March on Washington. To Imani, it was more than clothing. It was armor. She walked past manicured hedges, nodded at the security guard, who didn't look twice, and crossed the courtyard quietly. Inside, the chatter of students filled the air, bright, caffeinated, and buzzing with entitlement. Imani made her way toward her locker, her backpack heavy, her steps careful. She didn't notice him until she heard the voice. "Well, well, who let the help in?" She froze. That voice didn't belong to just anyone. Logan Wells, tall, cocky, football star, son of Principal Daniel Wells. Every teacher knew his name. Every girl knew his number. He walked the halls like he owned them. And in a way, he did. Imani turned slowly. Logan was leaning against a locker, a small circle of his crew behind him. His hair was too perfect, his smirk too practiced. "Nice dress," he said, voice dripping with sarcasm. "Did you make it in home ec?" A few of his friends chuckled. Imani's fingers tightened around her books, but she said nothing. Logan stepped closer, eyes scanning her like a display. "Wait, is this a costume or are you serious?" he said, tugging lightly at the belt loop of her dress. "What is this, Wakanda Sunday service?" "Don't touch me," Imani said quietly, her voice clear but controlled. He smirked. "Oh, she talks." Imani turned away, ready to walk, but Logan didn't like being dismissed. With one swift motion, he grabbed the hem of her dress and yanked it, ripping it at the seam. The sound was sharp, unmistakable. The laughter around him died instantly. Imani stood frozen, clutching the fabric against her thigh, the ripped seam gaping open in front of half the hallway. Her knuckles went white around the books in her hands. She looked up, straight into Logan's suddenly uncertain eyes, and walked away. No yelling, no tears, just silence. Whispers followed her as she ducked into the nearest restroom. The slam of the stall door echoed. She didn't cry. She pressed her palms into her thighs until the sting of her own skin drowned out the feeling of eyes on her. Outside, the hallway was already buzzing with speculation. "Did you see that?" Someone recorded it. "Oh my God!" He tore her dress. Actually, tore it. Logan leaned back against the lockers, trying to laugh it off, but the sound fell flat. His friends weren't making eye contact. 10 minutes later, Imani was gone from campus. She didn't go home. She went to a familiar place, the Formosa Cafe, a tucked-away spot her mother loved for its history and privacy. It was only a few blocks from the studio lot where her mom was filming. Imani sat at the back, hoodie pulled tight, waiting. The door opened, and Cherie Rhodes-Smith stepped inside. Tall, graceful, and unmistakably poised. She was known in Hollywood circles for her work as a producer, activist, and yes, the wife of Will Smith. But to Imani, she was just mom. She sat across from her daughter. One look at the torn hemline told her everything. "Who?" she asked simply. Imani looked down. "Logan Wells." Cherie didn't react. Not yet. She reached into her bag, pulled out a business card, and slid it toward Imani. "What's this?" "An invitation," her mother said calmly. "To a school meeting. Tomorrow morning." Imani's voice was small. "You don't have to." "I do," Cherie said, "because this isn't just about you. It's about every girl who's been laughed at, grabbed, dismissed. He did this to you in public, so we'll respond the same way." Imani's throat tightened. What if they don't believe me? Her mother's eyes didn't waver. Then they'll have to answer to me. That night, social media began to stir. The video had hit private group chats, and from there it started to spread. The lighting wasn't great, but it was clear. The tug, the rip, the laughter, the silence that followed. By morning, it was all anyone was talking about. By the time the first bell rang at Calder Prep, the video had already made its way beyond student phones and private threads. It had landed in the inbox of a PTA mom with over 40,000 followers on Instagram, and from there, it spread like dry brush under a match. Imani Rhodes walked through the campus gates that morning in jeans and a dark sweater, her head high, her steps deliberate. The whispers returned, louder now, not just with amusement or mockery, but with a new undertone: disbelief, guilt, fear. Logan Wells was nowhere to be seen. His usual corner by the vending machines was conspicuously empty. His circle of friends stood apart, subdued, avoiding glances. The usual arrogance of the school's elite seemed to have taken a hit, though no one would say it out loud. Inside the administration office, Principal Daniel Wells sat rigidly behind his glass-top desk, his expression carefully neutral. Cherie Rhodes-Smith sat across from him, poised, her phone resting screen down beside a legal notepad she hadn't written on. Imani sat to her right, back straight, hands folded in her lap. Mrs. Rhodes-Smith, the principal began, clearing his throat. I understand emotions are high, but I want to assure you we are conducting a full investigation. There are always nuances to these student conflicts. Cherie's tone was composed, but sharp enough to cut through glass. This wasn't a conflict. It was an assault. In front of dozens of witnesses, filmed, circulating online. Do you want to discuss nuance, or do you want to discuss why your son thought it was acceptable to rip the dress off a girl in public? Daniel shifted in his chair. It was a lapse in judgment. Cherie's voice didn't rise, but it didn't have to. A lapse in judgment is forgetting a homework assignment. What Logan did was a calculated, humiliating act of power. And let's not pretend his last name didn't convince him he'd walk away clean. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, clearly weighing his words. We take all student reports seriously. Do you? She asked. Because my daughter left this school yesterday in tears, without a call to her emergency contact, without any adult intervening, and now this video has made it to the local news cycle. So tell me, Principal Wells, exactly how seriously do you plan to take this? He leaned back, sighed through his nose, then said, Logan is being placed on temporary suspension while we review the situation. Imani blinked. Suspension? She said quietly. For tearing my clothes off in front of the entire school? Daniel looked visibly uncomfortable. Imani, I understand this is hard. No, she said, her voice rising slightly for the first time. You don't. You've never had to walk down a hallway with people staring at you like you're a punchline. You've never had someone touch you without permission and then be told it was just a joke. Cherie gently touched her daughter's arm, a silent grounding. Then she turned back to the principal. We're not here for suspension. We're here for accountability, real consequences, not just for Logan, for the culture you've fostered at this school. One that protects boys like him and silences girls like my daughter. Daniel's face hardened slightly. With all due respect, this is a school matter, not a media spectacle. I'd appreciate it if you didn't bring outside influence into a private disciplinary situation. Cherie smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I didn't bring the media. Your son did. But since it's out there now, we'll let the public decide what's private. An hour later, Imani and her mother walked out of the office, past the eyes of students peeking from behind doors and phones that buzzed with every new update. They walked with purpose, side by side, past the gymnasium, past the quad, past the world that had been so cruel the day before. When they reached the parking lot, Cherie unlocked the car but didn't open the door. She turned to her daughter and said softly, "This isn't over. They'll try to control the story, they always do, but we get to choose how we respond, not with rage." With clarity, Imani nodded. "What do? We wait," Cherie said, "and we speak when it matters most." That night, while Principal Wells tried to contain the fallout internally, the internet had other plans. The video had been reposted by two prominent education advocates on TikTok, then picked up by a local LA news station that ran a segment on elite school culture and the cost of silence. By morning, the story had made its way onto Twitter's trending page under the hashtag #DressRipGate. Cherie declined interviews, but her silence was strategic. The headlines were speaking for themselves. Meanwhile, Logan was called into his father's office, where for the first time in his life, he saw fear. Not in his own eyes, but in the eyes of the man who'd always covered for him. "What the hell were you thinking?" Daniel hissed, pacing behind his desk. "There are reporters calling the district. Emails from parents. Even the board has questions." Logan, for once, didn't have a smirk. He slumped into the chair across from his father's desk. "It wasn't a big deal, it was just a joke. She overreacted." Daniel slammed his fist on the desk. "You humiliated her. You humiliated me. You've put this entire school in jeopardy." For the first time, Logan understood the difference between being powerful and being protected. One had to be earned. The other could be taken away in an instant. At school, things were changing. Whispers turned into conversations. Students who had laughed before now avoided eye contact. Imani walked into class that day not as the girl with the ripped dress, but as the girl who had stood tall when the rest of the school bowed to silence. Even teachers seemed more cautious. A counselor pulled her aside between periods and offered a formal apology on behalf of the staff. But Imani didn't want apologies. She wanted change. That change came sooner than expected. The following Friday, Calder Prep held a mandatory school assembly. Every student packed into the auditorium, restless and murmuring. On stage stood Principal Wells, pale and visibly strained, a microphone in hand. "I want to begin by addressing the recent incident involving one of our students," he began. "We have reviewed the situation and have decided that the actions taken were not only inappropriate, but harmful. Effective immediately, Logan Wells will be withdrawn from Calder Prep for the remainder of the academic year. We deeply regret the pain caused, and we are committed to restoring trust in our community." The room erupted into gasps. No one had expected it, not even Imani, who sat near the back with her hands folded tightly in her lap. She didn't feel triumph. She felt something quieter, deeper. Relief. It was never about revenge. It was about truth. And now, at last, someone had listened. Outside, as students spilled into the quad, voices buzzed louder than ever. Some defended Logan. Others criticized him. But more than a few turned toward Imani not with scorn, but with respect. One girl, a junior named Natalie, approached slowly. "Hey," she said, voice unsure. "I saw what happened, and I just wanted to say, I'm sorry I didn't say something sooner." Imani studied her. She nodded. "Thank you." Natalie hesitated. "He did the same kind of thing to me last year, grabbed my waistband at lunch, laughed. I didn't tell anyone." "You weren't wrong to be quiet," Imani said gently. "But you're not wrong for speaking now either." And that was the shift. One story, one stand, rippled into something bigger. That weekend, the atmosphere at the Rhodes Smith household was quiet, but not tense. It was the kind of silence that followed after a storm, when the walls had held, the roof had stayed intact, and now there was only the slow process of rebuilding. Imani sat at the kitchen table with a cup of mint tea, a blanket draped over her shoulders even though the LA afternoon was warm. She scrolled through messages on her phone, some from students she barely knew, some from complete strangers who had seen the video and reached out with words of solidarity. A few stood out. One girl from a high school in Ohio wrote, "Thank you. I wish someone had stood up like that when it happened to me." Another, from Georgia. "You made me feel less alone." For all the noise and chaos of the last few days, those messages grounded her. They reminded her that even though the moment felt deeply personal, the impact was far more universal. Across from her, Sherry was on a conference call with legal counsel from the school board, calmly outlining not just Logan's behavior, but the broader failure of administrative oversight. Her tone was composed, professional but underlined with steel. Imani watched her mother for a moment, marveling at how she could balance both fire and grace in a single breath. When the call ended, Cherie looked over and smiled. "They're listening now," she said simply. "And not just because they're scared of the media. Some of them genuinely want to do better. But wanting and doing are two different things. We'll see who steps up." Imani nodded slowly. "Do you think Logan really understands what he did?" Her mother was quiet for a moment, then replied, "I think Logan understands that actions have consequences. Whether he understands the pain he caused? That's a longer road. But it's not your burden to make him see it. It's his." The following Monday, Calder Prep was quieter than usual. The buzz had not disappeared, but the energy had shifted. Posters for upcoming student elections were replaced by notices about consent workshops, dress code reforms, and open forums on student safety. For the first time, it felt like the school was not just reacting, but evolving. In her classes, teachers seemed more deliberate with their language. Even Coach Ramirez, known for his sarcasm and old-school jokes, opened his morning homeroom with a reminder about respect and personal boundaries. Some kids rolled their eyes, but others nodded. Small things, maybe, but meaningful. That afternoon, Imani was called to the counselor's office, not for discipline or questioning, but for input. Ms. Clay, the school counselor, was a quiet woman in her 50s with silver-streaked curls and glasses she kept pushing up her nose. She gestured for Imani to sit and said, "I've been here 18 years, and I've seen a lot of stories get buried. This one didn't. That matters. We're forming a student-led advisory group. Not just for show. We need students who've seen the cracks. Would you consider joining?" Imani hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, but only if it leads to action. I'm not interested in checking boxes." Ms. Clay smiled. "Neither am I." That evening, Imani and her mother sat in the living room, candles lit on the side table, the room softly glowing with amber light. Will Smith entered through the side door, wearing a gray hoodie and jeans, a grocery bag in each hand. He didn't bring a Hollywood entrance. He brought frozen yogurt, and that was enough. He set the bags down, walked over to his daughter, and knelt beside her. "I heard everything," he said, voice gentle. "I'm sorry I wasn't here when it happened, but I want you to know. What you did took more courage than most grown men I know could manage. I'm proud of you." Imani blinked fast, then gave him a soft, wordless hug. For all the noise and notoriety of his name, all the celebrity and expectation that trailed him, in this moment he was just Dad. And that mattered more than any headline. The next day, Imani returned to school and walked the halls with a new sense of peace. Not because everything had changed, but because she had. She no longer moved like someone trying to disappear. She walked like someone who knew her place and no longer asked for permission to stand in it. As she approached her locker, she noticed a sticky note pressed to the door. In loopy handwriting, it read, "I'm sorry. I should have said something." Imani didn't know who R was, but it didn't matter. What mattered was the quiet tide of students finally speaking up, in whispers and sticky notes and glances that said, "I saw. I heard. I believe you." The advisory group met for the first time on a Thursday afternoon. 10 students, 2 teachers, and Ms. Clay. Imani sat at the head of the circle not because she wanted to lead, but because everyone instinctively turned toward her when it began. They talked about rules that felt one-sided, about staff who looked the other way, about moments that seemed small at the time but added up to something toxic. And they didn't just talk, they planned. They proposed student liaisons, annual peer-led training sessions, anonymous reporting systems. For the first time, Calder Prep wasn't just responding to scandal, it was building a framework for something better. 2 weeks later, at the school's monthly parent-student assembly, Imani took the stage. The auditorium was packed, and the moment her name was announced, the room hushed. She stood behind the podium, fingers resting lightly on the edge, breath steady. She didn't speak with anger. She spoke with truth. "What happened to me wasn't just about a ripped dress. It was about control, about humiliation. But this isn't a speech about what Logan did. This is a speech about what we do now. Because every school has its problems. Ours got caught on camera, others don't. But if we use this as a turning point, then it doesn't have to be just a headline. It can be a beginning. And I'm ready for that beginning." Applause followed, not thunderous, but heartfelt. The kind that starts in a few corners and spreads naturally, like warmth. Her mother sat in the front row, pride etched into every line of her face. Will sat beside her, clapping, slowly, steadily. That night, as they sat at the dinner table, Cherie said, "You know, there will always be another Logan somewhere, but there's only one you." Imani smiled, a soft, real smile. "And next time someone tries to test that, they won't catch me off guard." Will raised his glass of sparkling cider. "To the girls who don't back down, and to the grown-ups who finally learn to listen." As the sun set over the Los Angeles hills, the Rhodes Smith house glowed with laughter, resilience, and the steady beat of change. And somewhere in the quiet heart of Calder Prep, a legacy had already begun, not built on fear or silence, but on courage, truth, and a ripped dress that became something no one would ever forget.